Hello dear viewers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'm going to demo a new set of devices from Monomono called Console 1856, and let's jump in. So I've got my Ableton session open with a bunch of stems, and I'm gonna first demo them on drums. I've got my pre-73 and EQ73 devices added already to the channel. Together they form a channel strip which is inspired by Neve 1073 legendary channel strip from their console. So I'm gonna first demo how it sounds. So you can hear it's a little bit brighter, a little bit more low end. The pre-73 is a drive saturation device with some additional features. There's an input trim, there's a polarity invert on the left and right channel, and there's a drive knob. You can drive the preamp to saturate the signal, and it also changes the frequency response. So with this type of devices, you have to be aware of your input signal, which goes into a device. That's why there is an input trim, which allows you to make the signal lower or softer or louder before it goes into all the saturation inside. So let me show how it sounds if you have drive at max and you attenuate the input on the same amount. Alright, so you can hear there's a little bit more low ends, a little bit more top end, and it also saturates the drum a little bit, so you can hear top end a little bit more. So what you also can do, you can drive the preamp, but then take the change in the loudness on the output of the EQ. I've driven the preamp at 8 dB, and I've also taken out like around 7.8 on the output. Alright, so I'm usually driving it around 8, but it really depends on the input level. Gain staging is what you have to master if you want to work with this kind of analog replicating devices. So I'm gonna boost about 8 dB. I'm gonna take out around 8. So let me jump into EQ and show what it does. So we've got 3 bands, 3 EQs, 3 EQ bands, sorry, and I also have a low cut filter. Low band and mid band, you can change frequencies, and the high band is a fixed frequency. It may seem limiting at first, but once you kind of used to it, once you master it, once you've tried it on a bunch of material, it is very, very convenient. It is very quick to mix with. There are a lot of tricks up its sleeve which are extremely useful, and based on my experience, it works on a huge range of material. I struggle to remember any case where I thought that, well, that's not enough, maybe I should use something else. And the simplicity of it is very liberating. It's sort of what you have to start thinking is, when you're mixing, you start thinking in broad strokes. Like, I want a little bit of top end, so I just have one dial. I don't have to think about the frequency. I just dial it up, see if it works. If not, let's say I want to boost the top end. So what I can do is what I can jump to 7.2 kilohertz, which is fairly high, and I can reduce the top end a little. So let me just demonstrate while playing around with it. Going back to what I said about broad stroke, when you kind of selecting a frequency, you kind of think in terms of what I want to add or remove from the sound. And you can experiment as well, like trying different frequencies. And since there is not a lot of frequencies, you can do this very, very quickly. You can sort of try, all right, I want to add a little bit of weight to snare, so I'm going to boost like 700 hertz. Or if I want to make the snare a little bit brighter, I'm going to boost 1.6 kilohertz or maybe even 3.2. So it is very simple to use, and you can try different setups really quickly. All right. So another thing that is here is spread. When it's fully counterclockwise at 0, then the signal is full mono, and when it's at max, it spreads in at like to the left and to the right at maximum. I usually like to add just a little bit of spread on some tracks which I want to have more width on. So let me go to bass and do the same thing. So I've got my pre and EQ, same setup. So let's hear the bass. So you can hear the bass benefits a lot from those added harmonic frequencies which are added by the saturation. So let me demo how it drives the bass signal. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to boost, or rather drive the preamp about 8 dB. I'm going to keep it at -7. So let me demo the EQ. I feel that's a good moment to demo the compressor. So this is a Comp 54, and it's inspired by a diode bridge compressor designed by Rupert Neve. And I think the version is 2254. There are a lot of versions of it, a lot of different iterations. But in essence, it's a diode bridge compressor. It has this very unique style of how the signal is processed. So threshold is pretty much self-explanatory. It's you dial the level where compressor starts to trigger when it kind of responds to the signal. Let me put it at -12, but it again really depends on what the level you're going for in what the incoming level. So this is again a gain staging you have to master. This whole left section is dedicated to the side chain where it doesn't affect the sound that is going into compressor, but it affects the side chain which triggers the compression and triggers the envelope follower inside the compressor. And it has a couple of things. So it either can work in dual mono mode where left and right channel are completely independent, they are compressed independently, and the stereo setup basically sums the left and rights together, or rather actually it looks for the max signal in left and right channel and it applies the same compression to both left and right. And it also has low cuts, and what it does is it cuts the low end from the side chain, so the bass or the kick drum on the drums doesn't trigger compressor as much, so the compressor only triggers on mid-range and the top end. And it also have a high shelf, and high shelf boosts or cuts the top end of the signal going into the sidechain, which means if you boost the signal, the compressor will be triggered more by the high frequencies. Attack and recovery, also known as release, and the timings are for the attack from 2 milliseconds to 80 milliseconds. Recovery is in seconds, so it's zero point 0.1 second, 100 milliseconds, or up to 800 milliseconds. And it also has two modes, auto fast and auto slow. You can use it conveniently when you have like dynamic signal, but you also want to level it out a little bit. And the ratio, how much compression do you apply when the compressor sees the signal goes over the threshold. And it also has blend and makeup. And blend mixes the signal between the original and the processed signal, while makeup boosts only the signal which is processed. So it's not an output boost, not output gain. It only affects the signal which is being compressed. So let me give you a little bit of demo what it does on the bass. So here I used very long, well, not just long attack speed, and at 80 milliseconds, and I use quite fast recovery. So what it does essentially, it lets some of the transient through, but then it applies some gain reduction to the signals. What you hear is the sort of peak from the bass, and then it dives down. So if you want to add some kind of dynamic, want to add attack to the rather sort of even signal, that's a very good way to do so. Then you get this sort of small peak in the beginning, and then it kind of dives down and equalized. You've got a couple of things here going on. You've got the main needle, which shows you the momentary compression, gain reduction of the compressor, but it also has two arcs which overlap. The darker arc shows the peaks where the gain reduction goes, min and max, and the sort of bright blue area shows you the RMS, the like average root mean square of gain reduction. And why it's helpful is you can see how much do you need to make up gain to make the dry signal and the process signal rather equal. I've used different thresholds, and I've changed the amount of compression which is happening. The bright blue jumped from 8 to 4, and as I applied different makeup gains equal to what the brighter arc shows me, it sort of equalized the signal between the dry and the wet. So let me show the compressor on drums a little bit, what it does. So you can hear the drums became like sharper. That's what I like to use on drums. I like to use longer attacks, attack speed, and quicker recovery. If you want to use like a parallel style compression, you can compress the drums a lot and then blend with the original signal to have this very sharp transient peaks, but also hear the original. For kind of more controlling duties, when you want to level things up, shorter attack and longer recovery would probably work better. You have to kind of try different things. And again, since you don't have a continuous dial, you have just a selection of attacks, a selection of recovery, you can quickly test things out. You can quickly switch and try different things and see how it sounds. You can throw it on drums, on bass. If you want to control like a piano or vocals, cut a little bit of peaks. If you want to make synths a little bit fatter, and since it's a diode bridge compressor, it actually adds a lot of character to your sound. There's a lot of distortion because it's sort of what it does internally. It emulates the diode bridge to rectify the signal, and it also uses diode-like interaction with the sidechain, which also adds character to the original material. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the Console 80 device, which is emulating the summing amplifier inside a console. And the way it works is inside a console, you've got all the channels, and those channels are basically summed together passively. So what is happening inside of console due to wiring, due to different kind of electronics and passive electronics mostly, the signal drops in levels. What you have to do after each time it drops, you have to boost the signal. And that's what this does essentially. It emulates the same process. So I'm gonna put this on the drum bus. You can put several of those things on every group. It adds saturation to the signal, and it also has a couple of pretty cool features which I'm going to show. First of all, you can switch between the vintage and the modern type summing. What it does, it changes frequency response inside the devices. So not only on this, inside the Console 80 device, but also inside all of Console 80 56 devices, which are added to your mix. So it changes the frequency response on all of them. And vintage has a little bit more saturation, while modern has a little bit more headroom and a different saturation curve. So in some cases, if you want like a cleaner signal, you can use modern. If you want more mid-rangey, like this heavy mid-rangey sounds with a little bit of cutoff on the top end, then vintage is your thing. So let me show what it does. And all Console 80 devices inside your project are connected, so if you change vintage on one, it will change on all of them. And another nice feature which I thought would be very fun to use is a noise floor, which basically emulates the noise floor coming inside the console channel. And there is always a noise floor because electronics is a little bit noisy. And like even old consoles, they are engineered so well that the noise floor is fairly low, so you can't really like hear it until you really boost it, but it's still there. So I'm gonna turn the noise floor on, and you can see it will appear on drums and bass. So you can see there's a little bit noise floor coming through. I don't know if you can actually hear it in your headphones or whatever you're using, but it's there. And if you have a lot of those in your project, the noise will become a little bit audible in the very quiet parts, which can be very desirable. In some cases, it can sound very pleasant. and it adds to the sound a little bit as well. And the noise is different between vintage and modern. So modern has lower noise floor, and the tone of the noise is a little bit different as well. And one last thing I wanted to show is a soft clip. And what soft clip does, it soft clips the signal about 0 dBFS. So if you boost your drums or if you boost your bass, and turn the soft clipping on, it will cut the signal if it goes above 0 dBFS. So let me show you. So this allows some experimentation with your mix, and I think it works really well. And the very last bit, so if you go to Console 80 and you click on our logo, you will find this thing. So what it does is that it randomizes channel strips, it randomizes the serials on them, and it adds difference between left and right channels. So if you randomize them, it will add a little bit of width to your mix when you randomize them. If you want to have the same settings for left and right channel, you can use stereo and it will do that. It's a bit kind of difficult to demonstrate with just 2 tracks. I'll just show you. It becomes more clear when you have more tracks with channel strip on, with compressor. It sort of creates more differences between left and right channel. It will add some width to the whole mix. Hope you guys like it. I have a full mixing video on our YouTube page where I mix this track from start to finish, and you can see the results and you can compare them with the original. We also have a comparison with hardware on our Instagram, so feel free to check this out. And thank you so much for watching. Don't hesitate to comment and ask questions. I'm always here and very happy to talk to you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.